All right, it is the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kaylee Hansen, a Pre-Sale and Business Solutions Consultant here with SVA, and joining with me today is Austin, who is a Customer Success Manager. So if you're new to these webinars, welcome, and if you're returning, it's nice to have you and see you back. A couple housekeeping items before we get into the webinar today. If you have any questions as we're going through the webinar, please feel free to drop them within the chat. Austin will be monitoring those. And then if it makes sense to stop and ask questions as we go through, we'll do so. Otherwise, we can hold those questions until the end, where we'll have a little bit more of a Q&A session. So with that, I'll go ahead and start. So today's webinar, we'll be really walking through Acumatica's 24R2 release that just released last week. We'll walk through some of those core features and then walk through as well what to expect during those upgrade process. All right. So to start, we'll do a little bit of an upgrade overview. We'll take a look at the newest versions as well as the retired versions and what that roadmap looks like. We'll take a look at the new feature highlights. So we'll walk through different areas today, including features related to usability, interface, and AI. And then we'll walk through some new features around finance, and then really some core industry focused features as well in the distribution, manufacturing, and construction industries. We'll do a little bit of a demo for some of those features as well, and then we'll wrap up today with some of those integration highlights as well, primarily on the Shopify and Amazon side. So a couple of resources before we get started. The details relating to Acumatica's 24R2 release can be found in the Acumatica community under the Acumatica 24R2 release notes. I will also point out, we always encourage all of you to be very active within the Acumatica community. So you can find those release notes there, but also product ideas are listed under the Acumatica community. So that's where users can go if they have a new idea for what they want to see in upcoming releases of Acumatica. You can post those within the Acumatica community. Other users can go and vote on those, and then those get incorporated into each new release. Moving on to kind of that release and version schedule, there's two major Acumatica releases each year. R1 is released in the April or May timeframe, so we did a webinar on that around April. And then R2 is what we'll walk through today. So 24R2 always comes out in the October or November timeframe. In between each major release, there's builds every 2 to 8 weeks, typically for smaller resolution of bugs or whatever that may be. All right. And taking a look at the product support lifecycle, so Acumatica supports the release versions for up to 18 months. So you'll see that Acumatica 24R2 will be available until January of 2026. And then we'll also see some of those on the later end of that timeline there, Acumatica 2022 R2 and 23R1, as well as those expected retirement dates there. So we always encourage our customers as a best practice to upgrade at least once a year, to start to pick kind of an annual cadence and then build that routine for each upgrade of Acumatica. All right, now we will walk through a bit of the upgrade process, what you guys can expect. If you've been through these upgrades before, you're probably familiar with this process, but anyone who's new here, we just like to unpack what that typically looks like with SVA, how we assist you guys in these upgrades to make it as seamless and smooth as possible. So first, we have a planning stage, and this is really where we'll assess kind of the workload of your team, understand when the upgrade will best fit into your schedule. And this can be helpful when we do have that annual cadence, that we always have an understanding of when that upgrade will typically happen and occur. The planning stage is also where we will identify any customizations or workflows that need to be tested. So just we're aware of that at that early stage within the planning session. Next, we'll get into the sandbox creation. So Acumatica provides a free 90-day sandbox for each upgrade. So what this does is they'll take a copy of your production environment and then they'll put this into a 90-day sandbox in that new version. So in this case, 24R2, and this is really where your team will get hands-on, understand what's new within the system, play around with it. We'll assist here as well. And this will really be where you go to test and train before you move that upgrade into your production environment. Next, we'll walk through some tailored training with your team. So we'll unpack some of the key highlights of the 24R2 release today in this webinar, but really we'll work with your team to understand which features are important to you since we know your business, which would make the most sense, and we'll walk through that training with you. So it's more of a tailored approach to that training of any new releases and features that would be advantageous to your team. From there, we'll get into a little bit of a piloting and acceptance testing. So we'll go through the execution of any use cases and test scripts. And then this is where from stage 1, if there were any custom reports, customizations, we'll begin to understand what those are, how we test those, and help you test them to bring those ultimately into production. And lastly, we'll go live. It's important to note that conversion, users, passwords, etc., aren't impacted. So it will really be a smooth process when we get through. I'll pause for a second here and note that this is kind of the typical stage we see, but depending on your complexities within your organization, this can be kind of a tailored approach to you, maybe less training and piloting as needed or more if needed as well. So this is typically what that upgrade process would look like and what you could expect from the SVA team to assist you in this process. All right. With that, we'll hop right into some of the new features. So again, this will be kind of a high level, what's new within Acumatica's 24R2, but there are over 350 new enhancements or features that exist that we won't cover today, but these are some of the ones we were excited about. I know some of our customers were excited about as well, so we'll walk through those in today's session. The first one is a pretty exciting new feature. So now in 24R2, Acumatica has added a new AI anomaly detection feature that can be applied to any generic inquiry within Acumatica. There's kind of some pre-built ones that they created this for, including the sales order margin analysis, the PO costs and AP bills inquiries. So we'll see that as we go into the demo today, both how you can add that to your generic inquiries and then what that would look like to detect those anomalies. And again, it's using AI features based on kind of sales history or historical data within your system to detect any anomalies in your data. So again, we'll walk through this in the demo, but these can be added to any generic inquiry within the system, along with some additional settings on how you might want to detect those anomalies. And then this is an example of what it could look like. So once that detection happens, which can run automatically, you'll start to see some conditional formatting happen for anything that has a severe anomaly versus a normal or medium one. So we'll take a look at what that looks like today, but it's going to track that severity, raise that awareness to you within those inquiries, and then also give an expected value of based on the past, what would you expect that value to be and how that difference is. Always a couple new enhancements around the approvals side. So there's been a new approval for reconciliation statements that's added and now available within 24R2. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on the new UI. So we saw this very briefly in the 24R1 upgrade webinar. I believe Logan had showed us what that looks like. So you can look back at that webinar. Otherwise, we will look at what this looks like again today. So within 24R2, the controlled release is now available, and then all general availability of this UI will be available within 2025. So it's available now to kind of turn on and test out to ease into what that new user interface will look like. And it's pretty slick. If you were in that past webinar, you would see that, and we'll see it again today. So that's pretty exciting and coming out more controlled release now, and then fully officially for general availability in 2025. All right, moving on to some of the financial enhancements. So the first one being the improvement and creation of AR prepayment invoices. So in 24R2, there's an additional invoice type that has been added within the within the receivables area, and this allows the tracking of customer prepayments. This is also advantageous if you need to report taxes upon receiving prepayments from customers. That is now available within 24R2 as well. So we'll see this as we go through the demo today, but you can track those prepayment invoices. You could either pay partial or full prepayments against that. And then once that payment is made, those can be applied to one or multiple invoices or sales order from that customer after the fact. So we'll see that as we go through the demo today. And then the next is on the bank feed side. There's a couple of different enhancements here. One of the main ones being there's now the ability to load bank feeds from a file. So within Acumatica today, there's kind of two main methods for that bank reconciliation process. The first is the manual import of bank transactions through that import bank transaction screen, or leveraging bank feeds that use Plaid or MX to directly connect to your bank to automatically pull in for bank reconciliation. So with 24R2, they recognize that some banks were not supported through the bank feeds. And so with that, there's now the ability to load bank feeds from an SFTP file. So the bank will create this SFTP folder, and then there's provisioned access to it. And then once that's established, the user has set up the mapping between that file and Acumatica. And then the bank will export those transactions to that file. Acumatica can detect that, and then it helps automatically bring in those transactions. It will detect any duplicates and also create the expense receipts for corporate credit card processing. So another availability in addition to try to make this bank reconciliation process even easier, specifically for those that may not be able to use the automated bank feeds if their bank had any uniqueness or didn't support that Plaid or MX connection. Next, we'll transition a bit into the distribution enhancements. Again, many new enhancements on the distribution side, but a couple main ones that we wanted to highlight today. So the first being there's additional purchase receipt verification that has been added. So with this, it's adding essentially an additional step for releasing purchase receipts once they come in. So what this is trying to resolve is any errors. For example, if a warehouse worker is putting in a purchase receipt, receiving that and releasing it, there's now an additional step for verification process. So for an example of this could be that warehouse worker may not anymore be able to release that upon the receive and put away function, but rather they would have a warehouse manager, for example, coming in, having that verification process, and then being able to release that receipt. So again, an additional verification step within this receive and put away process. We'll see at the top there's now the function to confirm the receipt. You'll see the release is not available right away, but can be after that confirm receipt side. So an optional step, but additional verification step available now for anyone who wants to choose to leverage it. A couple other exciting areas within the distribution side, there is now enhanced stock allocation with multiple units of measure. So now in 24R2, we can have the unit of measure conversion, and you'll see that side little checkbox saying it's a divisible unit. What this will allow is an easier allocation process for multiple units of measure. So an example of this could be you have kind of a company that is selling 40 hard drives, for example, and maybe 25 of those are available in your retail location, and then the remaining 15 might be within your wholesale location. So the salesperson might go ahead and put in, once they receive that order for 40 hard drives, they're going to put in 40 boxes because you have each, or set up within each box, there's 10 units in each box. So naturally, that salesperson would put in, okay, we want 40 of these, so we're going to do 4 boxes of 10. But the discrepancy there is that there's only 25 available in one warehouse, and then the remaining in another. So what this feature allows is these line splits that will automatically split these lines. And what that does is, in this example, it's going to say, okay, put 2 boxes, so 20, within the retail location, and then remaining 5 eaches. And then same thing for the warehouse location, or wholesale location rather, to put 1 box and 5 units. So you can start to see that line split to better allocate stock across multiple units of measures within various warehouses, for example. Next, a couple manufacturing enhancements. There's enhanced estimating. So the first being the ability to add price breaks to the estimate form directly within there. And then from this, having a primary checkbox to turn that into a sales quote. So previously, users had to create multiple estimate revisions in order to incorporate different price breaks. Now users can create the estimates with multiple price breaks based on the quantity of units that the customer may plan to purchase, all within that same version. And then you'll see on the screenshot here that additional price breaks tab added to that estimate screen. And then the primary estimate, whichever one the customer chooses to go with, for example, they can choose that as the primary, and that turns into that sales quote. So just more efficiency on the manufacturing estimating side, specifically for different order quantities and price breaks. Additional manufacturing feature is improved handling of outside processing. So many manufacturing organizations may have an outside process within their production flow. And so with this, Acumatica has made it a bit easier to purchase and move with those outside processes. So now you'll notice on this screen with the materials, you can have a new drop-down option for purchase and move. And what this will do, if that's selected, is automatically create and release a move transaction for the outside operation. So trying to make that a little bit more efficient on the outside processing side for manufacturing organizations. Next, a highlight on the construction side is the creation of pro forma invoices independently of establishing a billing cycle. So what this does is previously pro forma invoices and projects were created during the project billing procedure. So users were able to create manual pro forma invoices only if migration mode was activated for certain projects. So starting in 24R2, users can create pro forma invoices directly from the pro forma invoices screen, regardless of that migration mode. So a user can now enter and adjust pro forma invoices independently of the established billing cycle and easily enter ad hoc expenses that were not initially planned, for example. So a little bit more efficiencies on that creation of the pro forma side on the construction. With that, we'll get into the live demo and see some of these areas at play, including that new UI, the generic inquiry anomaly section, and then we'll take a look at those AR prepayment invoices as well. So I'll transition to my Acumatica screen, which you should all be seeing at this point. And we'll start by looking at that GI feature. So I'm going to go ahead and go into a specific data view, the sales order margin analysis. So again, this feature can be added to any generic inquiry within the system. So I'll show you what it would look like, how we may configure that, and then I'll also show you the example of that anomaly detection at play on the AP bills generic inquiry. So here is a specific generic inquiry I have within the system. So to add this feature to any GI in Acumatica, you would need the correct rights to be able to customize the generic inquiries. But if you do, you would go to this customization tab at the top and click Edit Generic Inquiry. And I will also point out, we have done a previous webinar on some more technical components of customizing GIs. So that may be helpful in terms of setting the stage for this feature as well. So as I go to that customization screen, we'll see the new feature added to detect anomalies. So it's an easy checkbox there. And then once that's checked, we'll see on the far right side some additional settings in terms of which values do I want to analyze, how often do I want those to be analyzed, any additional grouping mechanisms that can help feed that anomaly detection, all within this tab here. So you'll see the value for analysis that I'm going to check is that margin percentage. I can also add some grouping mechanisms to look at inventory ID, maybe customer ID is something I want to add as well. And then in this case, I have this frequency updating on demand. So when I run this, but it could also be daily, weekly, or monthly, as you see within this schedule as well. Once that's added to your screen, anomaly detection can happen by going to this detect anomaly button right through the top. Otherwise, this new processing screen is added within Acumatica as well. So if you have this feature turned on for multiple different GIs in the system, this is an area where you can see the breakdown of all of those generic inquiries, and then you can go ahead and process them through there. So here I have it on my AP bills or my margin analysis screen. And then once we go ahead and process this, you'll see what was uploaded, and then we'll also give a breakdown of what was detected on there. And so you can go ahead and process these. Otherwise, as I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, within Acumatica on all these processing screens, this can be set on an automation schedule as well. So if you want these anomalies to be detected and processed through daily, for example, weekly, whatever the cadence may be, you can go ahead and set up this automation schedule as well to set that processing frequency. All right, so I'm going to show you, I already ran it for my AP bills. So I'm going to show you once it's ran and once it's on, what it looks like. I'll go to my bills and adjustments screen here. And here you can already start seeing it at play. This is just my generic inquiry list of the bills and adjustments in the system. I didn't do anything to this GI besides just turn on that anomaly detection feature. So you'll see some of that conditional formatting happening here. And then we'll also see it adds this additional column for anomaly severity as well as an expected value. So I did create just a specific filter view at the top for anything that anomaly detection field or column rather is not empty or it's not normal. So this would be anything that's a medium severity or significant severity here. And then we'll see that appropriate conditional formatting going on to account for that. So again, paying attention to any discrepancies that may exist. And this is happening automatically through those schedules, for example, based on kind of that AI engine that's running behind it based on what they would expect from past sales or past bills in this case. So a pretty cool new feature that I would see more and more people using, especially as AI is continuing to emerge in today's world. Acumatica is definitely accounting for that. We see that at play in this feature, and I'm imagining seeing it at play, AI at play rather, in a lot of other areas within the system to come forward as well. So pretty cool feature that we like to just show. All right, with that, I'm going to transition a bit into the new user interface. So again, this is something some of you may have seen a little bit if you attended our 24R1 webinar. I'll show it again today, and then remember that this is something that is released that can be turned on and off within your system today, but then it's fully available for general release in 2025. So I'll go ahead and go to my payments and applications screen. So in this case, actually, let's see over here. Give it a second to load. And I'll show you how we may be able to set that up. So you can choose which screens, for example, you want a specific UI on. So within this release, we have the ability to toggle between a classic UI and a modern UI on a screen by screen basis. So I'll go ahead, just enable this on my payments and applications screen, make sure that's available. And you'll see this is the screen I'll be working on to show that modern UI. It has that modern view to it. So again, on a screen by screen basis for this release, you have the ability to kind of toggle between if you want that modern UI versus a classic UI. So for example, if this is something you wanted to roll out for specific teams within your organization, you may have those screens they're working with every day be that modern UI, but then teams that maybe are hesitant to move forward with it at the beginning, you may have that classic UI and then ease them into that modern user interface as well. So I turn that on for my payments and applications screen. So you'll see that generic inquiry looks pretty similar, but if I go ahead and add a new record, this entry screen is what will take into account this modern UI. And you'll see it's giving me this pop-up here that says the modern UI is turned on for this screen. And so here's what we see, a little bit different than what you've probably seen in the past. You'll see it looks more user-friendly, more modern, more consistent with what you'd expect in a modern application like this. So here we have the header area kind of broken up into various buckets here. You'll see adding of invoice lines, for example, pretty consistent with what you'd expect. So in terms of the functionality there, how you would navigate through, pretty similar, but just the look and feel is definitely a little bit different, more user-friendly in this sense. So the main feature that's exciting with this new UI is if I go ahead to the top and go to this section here, let me find it. Having a hard time reading my screen. All right, here we go. Screen configuration, there we go. Took me too long to find that one. So here, if you go into the screen configuration, this is where it's in more of a configuration mode. And you'll notice as a user, you have the ability to kind of personalize your view on what you want to see. So I'll just back up a moment here. You'll see each of these header areas having this little design tool. So if I click into this, first we'll notice that this area is not named. So if I wanted to name that something, I could say general, for example, whatever the case may want to be on a user by user basis, whatever makes the most sense for them in terms of what's in those header areas, those can be configured and named appropriately. Similarly, if there's additional fields that I think I need on my specific header, because it's something I work with pretty commonly, I can go ahead and add those as well. So here is the list of all of the elements that are included in that header area. So I could toggle those on and off or add additional ones. So in this case, maybe I want to see any available balance. I can go ahead and toggle that and maybe we'll drag it up here. And maybe I want that application date up there as well. And then the description might be something that I can put at the bottom here. So whatever the case may be, a lot of latitude to start to personalize these elements within the new UI. If that looks good, I can go ahead and press apply. And there we'll see that name changing. I added in the available balance field there, and all of that looks good. So this can be something that I load for a personal configuration. If you have the correct rights, this can be a setting that can be applied to all as well. I'll go ahead and load it as my personal configuration. And there we'll see all of those capabilities added in. So again, showed it for this area, but could be added in any other area too. Really just providing additional flexibility, user friendliness to add in and make available all of those main areas that you want to see in the header, as typically where a lot of users would like to see that. All right.
One question that I think it might be appropriate to address here, Kaylee, is on the new UI, can you bring user-defined fields to the main page from the UDF page?
Yeah. I believe so, but let us check in on that and just verify, and then we'll reach out and get back to you on that. So essentially adding in those user-defined fields into that header area available as those fields I can drag and drop is essentially the question. Yeah, we'll verify that and get back to you on that. All right, perfect. So pretty exciting stuff on the new UI. And we'll see this at play as we get through the next demo feature, which will be walking through the AR prepayment invoice. So I'll go ahead and go to my receivables and go into my invoices and memos. And I'll just go ahead and create a new one with that new prepayment invoice type that we saw within that slide deck there. So I'll use my handy dandy customer USA Bartending School. And then here in the invoice type, we'll see the new prepayment invoice added on as a feature. Have to configure that first. There we go. So we'll do that same thing for USA Bartending School. Again, that prepayment invoice type. And then let's just give this a quick description. And we'll give them $10,000 here. All right, I'll go ahead and release this and we'll take a look at what that looks like. If I go to my financial tab, here we have a little bit of different settings in terms of how this might hit the GL. So in this case, we have it debiting my accounts receivable and then going into that prepayment account. In this case, I have that set up as a customer deposit, for example. So here's that prepayment invoice. I'll go ahead and pay it just directly through this screen so we can see what that looks like. And you'll also see my modern UI is turned on again since I have it set up in my payments and applications screen. So a little bit of a look at what that looks like when you have an actual transaction in the mix as well. So I'll go ahead and save that. And we'll release this payment. So they made the prepayment at this point. This will track it in the system, and then we'll see how, as additional invoices come in, how that will have an effect on that prepayment that came in. So I'll go back to my invoices and memos screen. We'll see here, if I click into that prepayment invoice, it has a status of unapplied because they made that prepayment and has not been applied to any previous or prior, I should say future invoices yet. So it's going to be unapplied here. And it has that line total of 10,000 and then a balance of 10,000 as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create just a regular invoice for this customer. Maybe they had some consulting hours, and we'll see that date here. So I'll save that. And then on my applications tab, I can go ahead and load documents. And you'll see I do have two different prepayment invoices they made. The first being one that had already had an invoice against, and then that second one being the one I just created. So anytime a customer has a prepayment attached to their account, it will show up here and be able to be applied to all future invoices. So we'll go ahead and auto apply this. You'll see it's taking the first one that I created initially, and then it's deducting that balance there. So I'm going to go ahead and save it and release. And if I click into that prepayment invoice that I had, we'll see the application history of that. So here I have the initial prepayment that took place for $10,000. I had an additional invoice for $800 and then the one I just created for $800 as well. And so it's subtracting from that amount to the correct available balance there. So now you'll see they have a prepayment balance on their account of that $8,400 since these two different invoices were applied to that. So pretty cool new feature that came out in terms of being able to track prepayment amounts, prepayment invoices that a customer has. With that, it's also going to track the appropriate taxes at that time for anyone that does need that availability as well. And then any future invoices for that customer, you have the ability to apply that prepayment amount to pay those invoices. So pretty exciting stuff. And just a couple of features that we liked to point out for this specific release. So for the sake of time, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll get back into the presentation, because there's a couple of other wrap-up items that we wanted to talk about as well. All right. So a couple additional features and announcements. This has been kind of a big one on Acumatica's radar for a while, one that many of you may have heard about already. If not, this may be the first time, and that's pretty exciting as well. So Acumatica has a new professional services edition. So it's really tailored towards specific companies that originally maybe Acumatica didn't have a specific edition for. So that includes different types of engineering companies, architects, consulting companies, IT and computer services companies as well. So those kind of verticals within that professional services edition. And what this edition provides is kind of the wrapping together of different modules and features and different functionality specifically relating to milestone billing, resource management, and project accounting. So pretty exciting for any of our professional services customers, and something that they have recently rolled out. So if you're interested in learning more, not only about this, but everything we went through today, we would be glad to kind of sit down and have a conversation with you and explore some of those as options as well. Next, I'll also wrap up with a bit of the integration side. So a couple new enhancements on the integration side, primarily around the retail commerce integrations. So Shopify has been a pretty big integration with Acumatica over the years. And recently they just rolled out the integration of customer specific pricing or price lists. So those can flow from Acumatica into Shopify to make sure that consistent pricing is up to date for those company specific pricing levels. Next, with Amazon, they have an Amazon connection, both for fulfilled by Amazon or fulfilled by the merchant types of orders. And now within 24R2, they have integrated the return orders as an integration. So now any return orders will be integrated from Amazon within Acumatica as well. So some minor enhancements there, but pretty exciting stuff. And they continue to kind of evolve in all of their integrations. We've seen it over the last couple of years, primarily in this retail commerce space, which is pretty exciting. All right, with that, we'll kind of wrap up today's session. I know we walked through at a high level some of those core upgrade features. I will also reiterate, there's over 350 new features and enhancements, so a lot to look forward to there. If you're interested and you want to upgrade, definitely reach out to us, and we'll begin to have that kind of planning session that we walked through in the initial phases. Again, I'll also re-emphasize that within each major upgrade, Acumatica incorporates product ideas from the community. So they really are listening to a lot of users. They want to continue to roll those features out based on what makes the most sense for customers. So I would encourage all of our customers to be very active within the Acumatica community. If you have a new idea for Acumatica that you want, chances are a lot of other people might want it too. So definitely post those product ideas, upvote product ideas that you like, and you will likely see those rolling out in future releases. Additional notes related to the release can be found in the Acumatica community as well. That will go through a lot more detail of every single feature that's been added within that release. So that can be a good resource for your team as well. All right, and then we will wrap up with the next webinar is November 13th. So it's a pretty exciting topic as well, one that we very briefly introed in our 24R1 webinar, but it will be all about Acumatica payments. So that's Acumatica's new payment gateway and processor that's native within the platform and provides additional functionality related to click to pay options for customers. So it's one that has been on our radar. I think a lot of customers are intrigued and already have looked into it. So we're very excited to roll that out in our next webinar on November 13th. So if you're interested in that, please scan that QR code and we will be looking forward to seeing you then. With that, Austin, I'm not sure if there's any other questions at this time, but if you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get back to you on those.
No other questions at this time. And the one question that was posed earlier, we'll be sure to follow up as part of our wrap up and follow up to this webinar.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for taking the time to join us today, and we're looking forward to any next steps. Thank you.